Now, to me as a seller, that sounds like, oh shit, I was hoping to get more for that.
Yeah,
And as a buyer, I'm thinking, that sounds really cheap. You're telling me that like, if I could just pay cash for it, I'm gonna get my money back in 3 years.
Well, our good buddy that introduced us,
Yeah.
he will not pay any. He's bought in 3 or 4 businesses. He will not pay anything more than 3 times.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Online Growth Systems Show. Today we have a really cool guest, Ryan Tansom. He is the co-founder of GEXP. Ryan, you want to kind of dive into who you are and what does GEXP stand for?
Sure. So thank you for having me. So my dad and I had also back in the 90s when my dad started our family business. He mortgaged our house and bought a semi-truck full of copiers, and over the next 30 days he sold them all, and just to accelerate that, in 10 years in, he had a $20 million business. I worked in and out of the business my whole life. To save everybody the long story, I joined right around the financial crisis, and it was kind of a turnaround business, so we spent 5-6 years turning the business around, and then I always wanted the business. We never really knew how to actually structure everything, what our options were. We ended up selling it to a local competitor here, and learned a lot throughout the whole process. So I figured out that the whole growing and selling and the mergers and acquisitions industry is very fragmented and siloed, and so we created the company that I wish I would have had essentially a couple years prior to the exit.
Right. I think that's actually a pretty common theme in entrepreneurship is the see a need, fill a need kind of philosophy from the Disney movie robots, right?
Yeah. And you find all the pains and all the bruises, and then you go figure out a way to avoid them.
But I think there's something to say that you acknowledge that there was a need, because a lot of people just go through the pains and they might like initially look for a pill per se for the pain relief, but there's only a few people who say, hey, there is none, I'm gonna be the one to build it, and so kind of talk about your entrepreneurial drive of like, because you worked for your dad's company, so I would say your dad was the entrepreneur. At first you were maybe working for him, but you learned through osmosis a little bit of entrepreneurial vibes. What instilled in you? How early were you when you started like having the itch?
Well, I had a lawn business back when I was in elementary, middle school, and then I sold Cutco knives. I was always kind of wheeling and dealing, and then sold copiers through internships. I sold water filter systems back, one of my college years, and then so I think when you're in sales, you kind of always have the itch, and then was in sales the first couple of years when I worked for him, and the only reason you go through torture of working for a family business is because you want it to be yours. So I mean, you immediately like have, as the owner's kid, you work twice as hard as everybody, or you're the entitled prick that everybody thinks you're gonna be.
Yeah.
I chose to not be that.
Yeah.
So it ended up bad when I was working really hard, and then just realized, because my dad was kind of absent from the business at that point, about 100 employees, and then the whole goal was to take it over. And I realized how kind of a mess it was. There's no org chart of 110 people. So it was just like, there was a lot of work that needed to be done. So over the next like 6 years or so, like I had fired and rehired like 2/3 of our employees. So it kind of was my baby at the end. I mean, implemented a new ERP system. I built out the managed IT services and the software automation divisions as we were kind of becoming the full B2B tech provider. So in all intents and purposes, it was like I was treating it like mine the whole way, because it was like that was the whole like intention. So I think, and the passion behind what I did is like, it's kind of like I was there finally, and then all of a sudden the rug got taken out from underneath me. We sold the business, and everything I built was gone. We left millions of dollars on the table for the lack of a tax plan, didn't know our options, didn't know what private equity was. So like I just kind of realized that there could have been a lot of different ways that unfolded, and just pissed me off, honestly.
Right.
So it was like, okay, well, I'm young enough, and I got enough drive behind it, and I made a chunk of money when we sold. So it was like, I've got runway here to kind of determine like, what is this fixable? But I think a lot of people that when they sell their business, they walk off into the sunset. A lot of older people that they don't have the energy to go in and go, okay, that could have been done differently. So
right. So what do you see as like the biggest regret with people who are selling their companies?
Not knowing all the stuff that matters. Excuse me. So like, everybody thinks it's just about the dollar amount, which it is, but like a lot of entrepreneurs, they find a passion, a need, or a purpose, or something that like some reason that they start their business, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then they grow up and they're scaling it or whatever they're doing, but they don't. A lot of entrepreneurs don't understand finance like the private equity world, and so understanding evaluations, understanding different exit options, the legal deal structures, the tax structures, all that stuff that the elite advisors or the Wall Street, they understand that stuff.
Right.
So I think it's like really understanding both of those is probably the biggest piece that a lot of people don't necessarily wrap their head around.
Right. But it'd be a hard stretch to say that somebody who is focusing on their niche business their whole life, maybe they're on the technical side, to say, hey, go back, become a CPA,
Mm-hmm.
So that way, or go into finance so that you really understand before you sell this. Like, that's just not realistic. So like, where does GXP come in?
Well, and you bring up a good point, and I actually just gave a keynote like a couple weeks ago, and so when you get to the point, first of all, in the tech startup space, like VCs are usually predominant. So you either start your company from either sweat equity, some little seed capital from yourself, your 401k, or someone backs you. Right. So if someone's backing you, usually they're coming with that expertise. Like, hey, we're going to want to sell this. We want a return on our investment. We're bringing the heavy hitting team of the finance, the legal, the deals. So all that, that's usually taken care of in the VC space. But, people that start on their own and then don't surround themselves with those people that they can trust. And it's not just about trust, but it's like you don't want your H&R Block tax return person or your Allstate insurance agent. Like these are people where like they're in the deals all the time. Like the CPA should have hundreds of deals out. Like they're not learning on your dime. Mm-hmm. So I think it's leveling up your knowledge on all this stuff to the point, Dick, where like you understand enough about it to be able to determine whether the person is in front of you is bullshitting you. You know what I mean? So that way you're not getting taken advantage of. We're like, our CPA had only done 3 acquisitions ever. We're doing 20 million in revenue. Like that's a big deal. And like I said to the people in the keynote that it's your job to understand this stuff.
Sure.
Otherwise, you're going to leave a bunch of money on the table, and you go back to your regret question is they're done. They don't realize that taxes get wiped out half the earnings, or that like the person was going to fire half their employees and they didn't know that, or they just wanted the IP, or like it's just like about kind of going in eyes wide open. And like so when you make all these decisions, like what you gave up or didn't give up versus having a bunch of regrets afterwards.
Sure. So from that statement, I want to kind of dive deeper in 2 different directions. First thing I want to ask is, what can business owners do to dive deeper, to learn enough so that way they can tell if someone's bullshit or not? And then on the flip side, let's say a CPA is listening to this, somebody who's in the finance world and they want to break into the merger and acquisition space. What can they do so that way they can come to the table not being full of shit? And especially for somebody who's starting out, they're like, well, I've only done 3. Like, how do I become trusted enough? Like, it's kind of like the chicken or the egg, which comes first? Like, they won't trust me till I've done more deals, but I can't do more deals till they trust me. You know what I mean? So let's dive into both of those rabbit holes.
And what was the first one again? Because I got the second one.
Yeah, well, let's answer the second one first.
So
it's fresh.
I'd say, okay, so with any of these advice, going into how do you determine whether the person is actually worth the shit or not, I think it's really just asking the questions and not being naive. Like where we had all these suits coming in, and we just assumed that they knew what they knew. You know what I mean? Like we just assumed. So I think just that alone, just being curious and saying, how many deals have you done? Whether it's the legal space or the tax or even like a broker, an investment banker, how many, what's your track record? Just ask all those questions. It's your prerogative. Like you can do that and not just blindly accept even the people that you trust. It's like, you want to make sure, like, let's say we're great friends, but it's like, if you don't do this for a living, let's get someone that's capable of doing it. I think the advisors in the space, if you don't do this for a living, don't do it. Honestly, like if you want to get into the space, fully commit. You know what I mean? Go get there's certified. It's called the the Alliance of M&A Advisors puts on a certificate. There's all these certifications behind this stuff. So go do that. Partner up with the right people and fully commit. But like I think in the tax space or the legal space or any of this stuff, people make their money doing tax returns, audits, but that's not selling your company. So it's like just ask the questions and
so on both sides of it, if you're a business owner, find a specialist who they are like, all I do every single day for my entire career is buy and sell companies.
mergers
and acquisitions. I don't give a
and
shit.
tax strategies too. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if the tech people that are in tech that are listening, like there's something called an R&D tax credit.
Mhm.
Like, I mean, you can save shitloads of money if someone brings ideas to you. Where there's a guy from our roadie, a couple guys that have become clients, and like they're like, I'm bringing advice to my advisors and they haven't heard of this stuff.
Yeah.
And it's wrong. It's like, you know what I mean? Because entrepreneurs chat all the time, and all of a sudden they're educating their advisors, and that's not the way it's supposed to be.
Right. Yeah. That's I think that's a red flag, is when you have to tell. Oh my gosh, it's really interesting that you're saying that, because not only do I see that in the business realm of like, hey, Mr. Accountant, or hey, Mr. Lawyer, my buddy here just did a deal that went south, and you're giving me advice that was the same advice his attorney gave him that led him down that rabbit hole. You know what I mean? Like the entrepreneurs shouldn't be the ones that need to be spearheading, let's say, the merger.
But it's also, like I was saying though, like it is kind of your, like,
it's your baby. Yeah.
Well, and you should care enough to like at least start researching this stuff, read the books. There's a guy interviewed on my podcast that sold to GoDaddy. He's like, yeah, and two of the recent stories where it took time off of work and did a crash course. So like, listening to podcasts, reading the books, and like you have to kind of know this stuff.
Yeah, become a student of it.
Yep.
So how much time do you think realistically would someone have to commit from like, oh my God, I'm just starting to think about selling my company, to, okay, I'm comfortable with sitting down and certain conversations?
It's years. Like, I mean, it's years. Sure. Yep. If you do it right and then you slowly chipping away at it. I mean, like there's some of these people where all of a sudden they get a random offer, and that like they literally have to take off like a week of work and just plow through books to like understand the asset versus stock sale. Like, ordinary income versus cap gains, kind of a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, the good news is, even in the last 4 years, like there's tons of material that have been coming out. There's podcasts, there's books that, I mean, I bet you half the books have been released in the last 5 years because of the baby boomer wave that's coming.
Right. So what would you recommend? Because I'm sure that you consume just about every single thing there is out there. What's one resource that people should look up? Like, this is the first book you should read. Like, for example, when somebody's even thinking about business at all, I'm like, Rich Dad Poor Dad is probably the first book. It's kind of like how you're learning to crawl and then walk and then run, right? So what do you think is like the first book somebody should read?
Honestly, like, I mean, John Warlow's book, Built to Sell book, is awesome. It's a narrative. I mean, like, you could read it in the afternoon, and I think the reason I like it's not like super actionable, because it's not like here's exactly how to do it.
Right.
But what it is like it kind of gives you an idea that businesses are worth something at some point.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, knowing why you're building this business and how much you think it should be worth should be like the number one thing you do before you even start it. Like,
right.
Because if you're starting a consulting company, or a law firm or a CPA firm, right? They're not worth as much money as a software as a service business.
Mm-hmm.
So like your return on effort and your return on your spend is going to be like a fraction of a SaaS business or a manufacturing company with IP and distribution. It's just, so like, I mean, God forbid, God bless all the CPAs and the attorneys and the consultants all in the space, but like, can you imagine 30 years of your career and you go like, and all of a sudden, like, you realize that it's like you could have done something else and you could have 10x'd your work. Yeah. But no one told you that a CPA firm is only worth one times revenue, and that tech company is worth 10.
Yeah. And it would have taken you the same amount of years, the same amount of time, and
same amount of effort.
Yeah.
And it's like, so thinking, going back to your point about the book kind of explains how this guy just realizes that his digital agency is worth nothing, because it's not repeatable revenue. He doesn't have systems in place. So I think really just understand, like, why am I doing this? What do I want it to be worth? And then you intentionally drive the value of that business because of the operational stuff that you're doing.
Mm-hmm. So, okay, I like that. What is one thing that CPAs could do, or just finance people in general? What's like one book? Do you think they should also read that book to say, like, this is an entrepreneur's perspective on the services that or the problem that I'm trying to fix?
Well, CPA firms right now are, I don't know if you've seen it, but they're like, they're jumping on board with this outsourced accounting and not like, like almost contracts where we'll do all this stuff. So they're trying to figure out how to make like contracts and recurring revenues like more service based. Right. They're jumping into payroll services and like bookkeeping services, which is completely different business model, but they're doing that because they're realizing that their book is not transferable and it's completely related to their relationships. Right. So they're trying to do that to protect themselves.
Right. It's so that at the end of their career they actually have something of value.
Or
that
they can walk away, they're not stuck in it.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Yeah, that's true too. So let's talk about your background or the story of how you sold your company. I kind of want to talk about some of the mistakes that you felt that you made, and then how your current situation, your current company is helping entrepreneurs fix those problems.
So where do you want me to start with the business? Like, where do you want me to start with the story? Or is it?
Start where you guys were first considering selling your company, or maybe it was just your dad was like, "No, I'm done with this."
There was a lot of stuff that kind of came to it. So we were turning around the business. I think this gets really technical, but like,
Sure.
we were factoring our receivables. I don't know if you know what that is, but essentially what happens is a business normally has a normal line of credit, and so you can pay your bills and you can dip into that, but like you're not as reliant on accounts payable and receivable because you can smooth it all out with a line of credit.
Right.
We didn't have a normal line of credit. We were using our receivables. So like, let's say I sold you let's say you purchased $100,000 of material from us, or goods or services. I would sell that to the bank. The bank would give me 90 grand. And then I would use the 90. So it's essentially, I have to constantly be selling in order to pay my bills.
Right.
The moment we stop selling is the moment we have literally no line of credit.
Right.
So we were on that for like over a decade. Normally you would do that when you're in a high growth company and you don't have like a trend to figure out what kind of line of credit you need, whether it's $1 million or $5 million. So we were doing that, and it was just purely exhausting because our payroll was $250,000 every 2 weeks. I think close to the high, and so just so much work. So what happened was that the whole goal is I wanted the company, right? I mean, that was what we wanted, but we just never really got it to the point where it was like peaceful.
Yeah.
Honestly, and so we had hired, like, we brought an investment banker in from New York City. Didn't really know what they did. It's called a SIM, Confidential Information Memorandum, which essentially it's a pitch book that investment bankers use to go raise money or find a buyer. We were looking at maybe like having a cash infusion, like a private equity firm comes in, buys out my dad. Like, we have all this stuff that we just didn't know how it all worked. So we got to the point where we got advice coming from our CPA, from our attorney, from our banker, from all these people, and we just felt like it just got to the point where. And I was the executive VP, so like all the executive team was reporting to me. I was finally getting to the point where like I was running the business, and so my dad's got a lot of risk on the table. We had dumped millions of dollars into building the managed IT services. So when you think about like those overlapping S curves of reinventing the business, like if you think about Blockbuster, what they were trying to do with Netflix, and we were selling copiers, we were getting into managed IT. My dad knew nothing about managed IT, so it's like. He's sitting there going, so we're sitting down having beers at Granite City, and he's just like, fuck this, dude. He's like, I want out. I know that this is like potentially your baby now, but like all my chips, all my money's tied into this.
Yep.
I'm burnt out. I don't care. I hate our customers. Don't care about our employees. It's like, it was just kind of one of those things.
Yeah.
We went down the investment banking route. We looked at investors. We were talking to banks, and he's just like, I'm done. And I'm like, all right. And that was just, it is what it is. So, had we known all this stuff now, there's so many things we could have done differently.
Right. So were you disappointed that your dad didn't try to find a way to like have
we didn't
you
know.
take
We
over?
did together. So honestly, Dick, we spent years exhausting every avenue, and there just isn't stuff now. Like, even so, 4.5, almost 5 years since we've sold, like. Exit Planning Institute has come around, BEI, which is another exit planning certification company. Like, all these things have come around since we sold.
Yeah.
So like, there literally wasn't anything 5 years ago.
Why do you think this is such a new industry? Because people have been buying and selling companies since probably the dawn of time, right?
So check this out. So right now there's 27.5 million incorporated privately held companies in the US.
Sure.
Okay. So that's privately held. So then of those, 21 million of them are solopreneurs. They're in the gig economy, they're freelancers, they got a Dick Incorporated LLC, zero employees, so non-employee firms. That leaves 6 million companies. There's only 20,000 that are over $100 million in revenue. That's it, in the whole US.
Holy crap, that's from 20 million you said to 20,000?
27, so there's 27 privately held, 21 million are photographers and freelancers. 6 million of them have employees. Only 20,000 of them are over 100 million. there's only 350,000 between 5 million and 100 million. So check this out though. Of those 100, of all these that have employees, they employ 120 million Americans. Okay.
Wow.
So, and then the 100 million plus those 20,000 employ 60 million. The 5 million to 100 million, which is 350,000, they employ 30 million employees. So then that says, okay, well that there's 5.6 million companies that are underneath 5 million in revenue.
Right.
And they employ 35 million Americans.
Mm-hmm.
Average age, 62.
Of the owners?
Of all these owners.
Wow.
It's a big deal. So it turns
That's
out.
the average?
Yeah. Well, think about it. Every single corner, there's an assisted living facility popping up.
Yeah.
I mean,
but that just blows my mind though. Like that. Average is like everybody's numbers added up in
4.5 million companies are owned by baby boomers out of the 6 million.
Holy shit.
So now think about this. Well, I mean, in the Twin Cities Business Journal, this week, it was all about the labor shortage. 10,000 boomers are retiring every day. So all the wealth managers are trying to get the retirement savings. All the assisted living facility people are going to like essentially take care of them while they die.
Yeah.
But like, what about these business owners? Like, they don't have these plans. But so when you ask why is this industry coming up, is because think about when my dad and I were selling.
Mm-hmm.
Average age was only 57.
Right.
57. You don't have your ARP card yet. You don't have Social Security. You got no grandkids. You got lots of energy. Now all of a sudden you're 62. Social Security. You got grandkids. You got friends that are having sick ailments, and so like these people, mortality is like literally hitting them in the face.
Yeah.
So all of these like things are kind of popping up because they know that they call it the silver tsunami because it's a freaking big problem, dude.
Right.
So now think about it. There's 65 million Americans that work for these people,
and their asses are on the line because it's like, well,
if they shut their doors, they don't have a job.
Exactly. Holy shit, that's intense.
We'll take it like when you say go down the rabbit hole. So So you got 65 million Americans that work for these people. So let's take the normal up and down the street HVAC company, garage door company, or roofing company, or laundromat, or you name it. It's all this shit.
Yeah.
So let's say they've got 30 employees.
Yep.
It's an average business.
Sure.
So you have 30 employees. They're probably doing $6 million in revenue. The owner's used to making $250,000 a year. Mm-hmm. They're employing all these people that are making between 40 and 70 grand a year. Mm-hmm. So it's a revenue generating economic machine. The businesses, right?
Yep.
Let's say the owner can't sell because let's say on $6 million in revenue, they're probably doing 600 grand in EBITDA if they even know what that means, and the thing's probably worth 3 or 4 times X. So you're talking, it's worth maybe 1.8 max. Mm-hmm. You pay 50% taxes, that leaves you essentially with 900 grand.
Yeah.
And you can only pull about 35 grand a year off of 900 grand in the marketplace. So you go from making $250,000 to like you put it in the market, the stock market, you can only pull 35 grand out of that.
Yeah.
So like you're screwed. So
that's like not even like that's like what your lowest employee is probably making.
So they're trapped. Yeah, and again, that doesn't mean that pulling the 35 grand or whatever out of that 900, that means you're not touching your principal.
Right. Yeah. So that's just the interest.
Yeah, it's just the withdrawal. So now.
But most people don't want to touch the principal.
Right. But now think about this, Dick. You go, okay. So this guy or gal that owns this company, who's used to making $250,000, that has boats, cars, cabins, all this shit, and they have 30 employees. If they can't sell it, first of all, because they financially can't, or they're screwed if they financially sell it.
Right.
Let's say they shut their doors. Now you have this $6 million economic machine that goes to nothing, and then you have this person who's used to making $250,000 now is pulling their money out of the stock market. They're now on Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. So you go from this like revenue generating thing to everybody they're pulling off the tip of the economy. Yeah. It's like kind of.
So instead of actually like being a productive member of society, it totally does a flip.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, hope somebody else is doing better than me because they got to pay for me now too. Like,
what happens to the employees and like who's
who knows? Maybe out of 30 employees, how mmany of them get whether it's just supplemental security income, just like a short-term thing, or they're like,
or hopefully a buyer comes in and actually buys it and continues to employ them.
Right.
But if someone's doing a roll-up in the industry, it's all redundant. Like when we sold the business, we fired 50 people. because it's selling to a strategic buyer, so you don't need the employees.
Right. Yeah. They're just using it for other assets, book of business or IP or something like that. Yeah.
So I think it's like knowing how all of that works allows you to like navigate the game of like, okay, well you got a business, what's it worth? What are the options?
Right.
How do I keep my income? How does my income and what I need for my numbers affect my exit options?
Yeah.
And it's
So what can baby boomer, because we've got baby boomers who listen too, like what are they're probably like shitting their pants right now, like, oh my God, like you mean that I thought that I was like just one of the few that are looking to sell, and you're telling me that I'm going to be competing? Because there's obviously, if there's a big influx of sellers right now and there's a small amount of buyers, everybody's not like cash.
it's interesting what's going on currently in the marketplace. So it's called dry powder, which is non-deployed capital.
Yeah.
So family offices, pension funds, private equity firms, all these people have money that they're supposed to spend.
Mm-hmm.
So there's actually more money right now on the sidelines that haven't been deployed or haven't bought companies than ever before. It's like $2 trillion.
Why?
Because, well, I'm gonna go down the rabbit hole, but why I believe in so there's 6,000 private equity firms in the US, roughly. So why there's more and more PE firms popping up is because it's easier to raise money now than it's really ever been, because people are chasing interest.
Mm-hmm.
So if you think about the average, where these people get the money is like a normal pension fund. So if you think, okay, Minneapolis PD, and I'm just making this up, I have no idea what their balance sheet looks like, but Minneapolis Police Department, or like the Teamsters and all these people that are the unions, they have to pay people's pensions, right? Well, they ran their numbers. All of the actuaries that ran all these numbers did it with people dying at 75, with an average 7 or 8% interest. Well, the reality is they're living to 90. Yeah. And you're not getting 8% guaranteed interest, so they're screwed because essentially their liabilities are too high. Yeah. So that's why I don't know if it was Teamsters or the other one, they cut their benefits for the pension all across the US half. So you're used to making $3,000 and all of a sudden now you're $1,500. So what happens is these pension funds are giving the money to private equity firms and stuff and other people to go buy companies and to buy other assets with higher returns so they can pay their liabilities. Right. So there's more money than there's ever been, but the problem is they're overpaying for these assets.
For acquiring the businesses?
Yeah, because these people have to. So like if we raised money, we have to go spend it. We get paid to go spend it. Yeah. Because we need the rate of return. It'd be just like us, you and I starting a real estate fund, and we need to go spend and buy the real estate to get the rate of return, right?
Yeah. Otherwise, it just sits there not doing anything.
Right. And these people charge an asset management fee, so then they're like, okay, well, you haven't spent the money yet, and they're like, well, there's no assets to buy. Yeah. So essentially, these people are going, none of these businesses are actually healthy. So it'd be like us going to the real estate market and going, okay, well, we're supposed to buy these for like a financial reason, but we'd have to go in and do all the work. Yeah. And we're not staffed up to do that. We don't have the contractors, we don't have the fixers, the plumbers, and all that stuff. Right. So there's more money because these people haven't found good companies to buy, but the ones that they are buying, they're overpaying for. So there's more money than there's ever been, but a lot of them aren't operators. Like they're not gonna be able to go in and fix up that company that I was talking about, right? Right. They'll implement the ERP.
They're just the capital.
Yeah, ERP systems, digital marketing, sales, software, all that kind of stuff. So there's more money, but to your point, like no matter what, there's gonna be so many. It's gonna be a trickle effect over the next 5 or 7 years. It's not gonna be like one day, everybody puts a for sale sign up. It just like slowly gets more and more and more. And you're right. I mean, if you wanted to sell your house and there's only 2 people on your block, you don't have to do that many renovations, right? But if all of a sudden there's 17 houses for sale, like you better have granite countertops, walk-in closets, all that stuff, because the buyer gets to pick what they want.
So so you said that there's plenty of capital out there right now. Is there a lack of buyers right now? Or is that not a problem?
The capital and the buyers tend to stick at the top, like the higher end of the market. Sure. So like typical, like for an investment banker or private equity firm. So investment bankers are like the elite brokers. So brokers just slap shit on a website, and in the online space, they're actually a little bit more, I like what their services are. So they actually are good people in the up and down the street. Like it's quasi okay what kind of service you get, like more like a real estate agent listing your house. Right. But So the investment bankers and private equity firms stick above 2 million in EBITDA. So that's 2 million in profits, for the lack of a
Right.
technical term, right?
Right.
So that's, if you go back to my numbers, that's in the higher end of the marketplace, which not a lot of people are, and that's where all that money wants to play.
Right.
So that money isn't going really down. They're starting to, but they're not really downstream where most of the companies are.
Okay. So it sounds to me like where the problem lies is that the companies that aren't doing like the 2 million EBITDA, right? It's the people who are between that, those baby boomers that
We call it the no man's zone.
Okay.
It's just like they don't, like, you don't get good help.
Yeah.
All the advisors are like kind of half-assed.
Yeah.
You don't really get investment banking help to sell your
Right.
company. It's like you get slapped on a website. They're not helping you with tax plan. I mean, it's
So that's where the problem is there's not enough buyers looking at those ranges of companies, and those are the ones that are at risk for
Well, think of,
closing the doors.
let's actually run through the scenario. So
Sure.
if you and I, which most people, by the way, don't realize how actually it's a lot easier to buy a business than most people think.
Sure.
So I think there's people our age that we should be going out in droves to like actually line up to buy these companies. So right now, if you had, let's say you had let's call it $1 million in EBITDA.
Yep.
So you're probably a $10 million in revenue business.
Mhm.
So that business is worth probably $4 million. So you take 4 times $1 million.
Yep.
Okay, so yeah, it's a $4 million company.
Yep.
You were using an SBA loan.
Now this is EBITDA is like hands off revenue, or that's with you
It's-
being the operator.
So, well, EBITDA, they call it normalized EBITDA.
Sure.
So what you do is you're like normalizing free cash flow.
Sure.
So it's SDE, seller's discretionary earnings, is like what's available for the owner. So that's
Right.
usually including the owner's
Right.
count. But this
They
is
want
like,
to take like an owner's
yeah,
draw
like
or-
well, right. So like this is like, you know what, if in the EBITDA there needs to be a general manager that's making 150 grand, right? So
Right.
whether it's me that comes in and does it or I hire someone,
Yep.
it's above and beyond that. So it's the free cash flow. So it's
Got it.
call it $1 million, or let's even do it something more reasonable, like more all encompassing, 500 grand.
Sure.
So it's doing 500,000. That's a $5 million business,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So $500,000. That means that company's only worth 1.5 million bucks.
Okay.
So a 5 million. Most people don't realize that is a $5 million revenue business is worth only probably 1.5 million bucks.
Right.
Maybe 2. If you're going up to the 4 times, if it's really healthy and they've done all the good stuff, maybe it's worth 2.5.
Now, to me as a seller, that sounds like, oh shit, I was hoping to get more for that.
Yeah,
And
you're
as a buyer, I'm thinking, that sounds really cheap. You're telling me that like, if I could just pay cash for it, I'm gonna get my money back in 3 years.
Well, our good buddy that introduced us,
Yeah.
he will not pay any. He's bought in 3 or 4 businesses. He will not pay anything more than 3 times.
Yeah.
Because it's too expensive,
Right.
right? So I mean, it's the same.
Because there's plenty of players that are willing to sell for that, so.
Yep. So now go back to this. So let's say this $500,000 company you paid 3 times, so
Yeah.
$1.5 million. By the way, this person, but you see the problem. But
Yeah.
so $1.5 million, you only need 150 grand. So you need 10% down because you can take out an SBA loan.
Yeah.
To buy it. So you would need $150,000 down, which you can use your 401k and some other stuff. So you could actually go buy this business with 150 grand.
Right.
So, and if you don't have
your own cash.
of your own cash, so if you don't have 150 grand, it's not as hard as most people think to go find that.
Yeah.
And then if someone gives you the 150 grand, so let's call it for 10% of the business. If it's underneath 20%, they don't need to personally guarantee anything. So they can actually give you the money down. You go in and operate it. You personally guarantee everything, but I wouldn't have to if I gave you the money down.
Yeah.
So there's super interesting ways to go in and actually buy these companies. But now think about this: on a $1.5 million, can't remember what the dollar amount is. I want to say it's 15 grand a month is
Sure.
the debt service. So you're talking, 200 grand roughly.
Mhm.
But remember, we said the thing kicks out 500 grand.
Yeah. So you're pocketing 300,000 a year. Yeah, and you only put 150 into it.
Sounds like a pretty solid deal, right?
Yeah, if you make your money back in 6 months, I'd say that's pretty good.
So that's people our age need to start.
Why the hell are
understanding-
people buying stocks when they could just be doing that all day long?
Well, my friends and I, we've actually talked about that. I mean, because I've got my dad and I rolled our money into the market too, and I
Yeah.
actually got my securities license, so I really dove into the finance world.
Yeah.
And it's like it's everything's got its time and place, but like think about what are you paying to get into Amazon stock right now?
Right. It's like what,
1,000
$1,500 bucks.
And it's 1,000 times earning, or 1,000 times revenue.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. I look at
you
the PE ratio and I'm like, holy shit, this is inflated. You know.
Yeah. But you could go in and buy, you know, an HVAC company for 3 times EBITDA.
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to be a lot more work. You're going to have to do some stuff, but like if you understand how to run a business,
Yeah.
or if you don't, I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer.
Right. So how come there isn't people our age running out in droves, like snatching these up left and right?
How many people know that you can buy a $5 million revenue business for 150 grand?
Wow. A couple thousand more people unless they see this. Yeah.
And I mean, it's I think me and another friend of mine, like I think there's an opportunity at some point to start like an entrepreneurs academy that
Yeah.
like teaches, you know, how to value a business. What are the operational things like sales, marketing, ops, finance, legal, like the whole inner guts of a business.
Right.
And then you teach this, and then I don't know if you're familiar with EOS or Traction. You know, there's a book that's out there that talks about how to like run the management meeting. So you just like take this system and you place it on the business.
Okay.
So I think there's got to be an opportunity for that.
So are you thinking that the majority of the businesses that are for sale are actually like sustainable, or are they ones that like really need work, like the fixer-uppers, or?
I think you're going to see the whole spectrum.
Okay.
I mean, like if you think about the smaller the business is, the more risk there is.
Right.
You know what I mean? If it's a dry cleaner or a gas station, I don't want any part of that. Right? This is like, you know, there's the more infrastructure, the better. And I think there's this goofy for all the startups that are listening to is there's this goofy point when you're growing a business where you hit the $1 million mark and it's a son of a bitch to get there. But as you're growing and you're in the couple $1 million mark, you have to double down and reinvest in the business to keep it growing. Because what so many people do is they hit 100, like call it $1.5 million in revenue.
Yeah.
And if you take the average of a 10% profit of EBITDA, so you're making 150 grand. So finally they're like, oh my God, finally I made it.
Yeah.
Buy a bunch of shit, my car, you know, my house. But then you don't have any extra profits to reinvest. And you're just like, but that's why so many people get stuck. Because they don't look at it like an asset. They look at it like, finally, now as long as I wake up and go to work, I can get my 150 grand and I'm fine. But the reality is, like,
I'll have something to sell someday.
And then 30 years later, and that's the exact same situation.
Repeat.
Yep.
So you're saying that they should kind of like live below their means, continue that, even though, like, say that they were paying themselves like 70 grand, right?
Yeah,
and they're
do
like,
what's reasonable, right? Like, you know, as you're continuously making more money, don't let your light, like, if people treat it like an asset, like, then you're not gonna pay yourself a $400,000 salary, right? You know, pull whatever you need to have fun, like, enjoy it. Like, there's, you know, ebbs and flows, but like, realize that if you don't keep investing in the business, like, you're gonna, like, it's going to go like this in value. I mean, it just, people say, well, I'm not going to spend money on servers or infrastructure, or this or that, or machinery or whatever the hell it is, you know, updating my code or all that. Like, the thing is, if I was a buyer and I came in and I'd say, well, you haven't spent any money in the business for 3 years. If I buy it, I'm going to immediately have to put $500 grand into it.
And that's going to decrease your price.
Yeah, because I'm going to, like, just like with a house, right? If you're going to have to go in there and, like,
fix it up,
get rid of the shag carpet and, like, the old, you know, cupboards, and, like, I'm going to take that off the price.
Right. So what is something that okay, so somebody's listening to this, they're like, holy shit, I've got a 401k with some capital. What's the steps that they can take to like start taking advantage of these awesome opportunities right now?
I'd say like one of the best exercises that anybody could do, whether they're a business owner currently or they're listening to this and we call them corporate refugees. You're stuck at 3M, you're 40 years old, you're like, what, you know, how do I get out of this rat race? And I go on to Biz Buy Sell, Sunbelt Business Brokers, Calhoun Company, and you can see the listings, right? So you'll go in there and you'll be able to filter through, and it's random, like, you know, septic pumping services or HVAC, or, I mean, there's tons of HVAC and plumbing, or, you know, garage door companies, or, I mean, solar, I mean, I do it all the time because it's fun. It's just like looking at houses. But when you find something you like, you can ask for more information. You end up talking to the brokers. You'll have to fill out a non-disclosure and potentially send them a net worth statement. So you just say, hey, like, by the way, I've got enough money potentially here, you know, to buy this business for the down payment. So the broker websites, but then talk to some banks, and because they can get you pre-approved. It's just like a mortgage, Dick. Like, so just like you can go get pre-approved before you start looking for houses. talk to any of these community banks. So like in town here, there's Highland Bank that I love. All of these people want to give you loans, right? So like they'll sit down and they'll say,
That's
okay,
how they make money too.
right?
Yeah.
So they'll do it just like with a mortgage. They'll get you pre-approved. They'll look at your net worth statement, say, okay, you got the funds, and then the banks actually care. They care that you can make the down payment. So if you can't make the down payment, figure out who you can find it from.
Right.
But also, they care almost just as much, if not more, about your resume. So for example, I actually ended up talking to this guy. He ran like a $50 million division of 3M, was looking for businesses, and like the bank wants to know that, like, for example, let's say this is you and we got you approved and all that.
Yeah.
Can Dick run a company? Because if he can't, the chances of him repaying this loan are little, right? Because the business is paying for itself. So just like with a mortgage, they look at both your incomes. Like you both have a job, you got a sustainable job, you got a good debt to equity ratio, and you'll be able to pay for the house. This is the same thing where like the $500,000 can pay for the $200,000 in debt, and Dick's not an idiot, and he knows how to do customer service and how to sell, and he's got a good background. So they check the box.
Okay, so what kind of companies? How often do you buy a company first?
I've done the stupid thing, which is it's funny, I actually interviewed this guy named Walker Dybel. Great book, by the way. If people are even more interested in this, it's called Buy Then Build.
Sure.
Right? Don't start one from scratch.
Okay.
It's pretty much his MO.
Right.
And man, do I agree.
So why do you agree with that statement?
Because first of all, he's got a whole book and I've got a podcast with him, so we answer that in like an hour and 10 minutes.
And we'll put the link in the description.
Yep. So in essence, Dick, so I sold the business, I made a bunch of money.
Right.
And I've been burning that cash and like almost like driving a dump truck with cash down the highway with the back open, trying to find product pricing fit in the marketplace, making sure that you have all of this work to do. And there's a reason VCs, they call it the moonshots, right? So they bet on 20. It's like gambling.
Yeah.
Right? Because the chances of it happening are so small.
For a startup. Yeah.
For a startup, you're gonna burn through shitloads of cash. You're gonna have tons of challenges trying to figure out whether your customers like it, the whole lean startup MVP. All of that work. When I just told you could take $150,000 and go buy a company.
Yeah.
So now think about this. Let's say it's a plumbing company. I'm just making shit up. So if it's a plumbing company and they have never used any technology or any digital marketing, okay, let's go do that. And then there's actually a company that I followed. It's called Service Titan, and these two guys, their dad had I don't know what business it was, but they service HVAC, plumbing, garage doors, and electricians. And their dad had a business in one of those, and they built the software system for their dad's business. Yeah. And then now they sell that software system to everybody else.
Right.
So Walker did the same thing. He went and he bought a printing business, and then he developed using the cash flow of the company funded his own stuff instead of having to go raise money
to go innovate something, and then you can sell it to your competitors.
That's exactly what he did. He made a bunch of money.
Yeah. And then you have a sub business, like a SaaS product within your own HVAC business,
which makes it more valuable. Totally. So they can either buy the IP plus this, or you just sell the HVAC business, and then you take the IP and you sell it to the rest of the industry, and then sell that. Yeah. But you didn't have to go find a VC and do like the crazy shit over 3 years.
Sure. So the one thing that keeps coming up in my mind is the kind of companies you've been mentioning do not sound sexy. They just don't.
What's Warren Buffett's whole deal?
Yeah, he finds traditional businesses that are not gonna disrupt.
Do you know how much the owner of Waste Management is worth?
Oh, isn't it
he started that again? It's like billions of dollars, right? Because they're in I can't remember what other business it was. Was it Taco Bell? I think it was. But he's like, there's everybody in this industry. All of the service providers are mean. They don't respond. Right. And then he just goes, if I just go into this industry and provide good customer service,
I'm gonna kick ass.
Right. So would you rather be a coder that's living off of 2 hours a night of sleep, snorting Red Bull, or making $500,000 a year? Right. Because you're servicing toilets or something. I got a buddy from college. His family owns a rental business and a porta potty business. They compete with Biff's. Right. They make a lot of money. Right. We're actually on the golf course, and we're down.
On that.
Yeah, we're down south, and we're going by this, we go up this bunker, and he sees one of his porta potties. He goes, "Smell that?
Smells like money."
That's exactly right.
That's awesome. Yeah.
But like in the rental business, no technology, there was no inventory system, so he's implementing all this stuff.
Yeah.
And by the way, he was a CPA manager at Redpath, like so the big accounting firm.
Yeah. And so he transitioned from CPA to
because he wanted to make more money.
Yeah, because that's where the money is right now.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, so rentals, renting like stuff, gear, and
Yeah.
blow up tents and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And porta potties.
Right. So do you think that people, because we have a lot of people who talk about disrupting industries and how robots are going to take over the world, and you even mentioned that, we could talk about that too, but so do you think that people, I think they'd have a justified fear of saying, why would I buy a traditional business when Google's going to release a robot in 5 years that's going to automate it completely?
So there's a book called Superpower AIs.
Mhm.
Superpower AI just launched with the top AI scientists in the world.
Yeah.
And there's another book called Life 3.0.
Mhm.
So if you take a lot of these, so the number 1 and 2 things is you cannot automate or replace human to human compassion and service.
Right.
It's impossible. Like, I mean, robots will not be doing that for the foreseeable future.
Mhm.
The second most impossible thing, it's not impossible, but one of the most impossible things is ambidextrous, our fingers.
Yep.
So Elon Musk has been known to say this, you can't do that. So think about HVAC, installing garage doors, plumbing, electricity, you can't do that.
Yeah.
So it's actually one of the most, this is why I'm actually
The most protected ones, yeah.
and they have not had any technology applied to it. But those are just the easy ones because everybody understands it. But you can name any businesses in there, or in the up and down the main street. You walk and you drive down, you got tile installation, flooring, all what. So if you go and you look at these businesses and you like, because I've got another partner that we're going to be going out and buying a bunch of companies, and if I don't need, so like let's take that $500,000 example.
Yeah.
I don't need the money, right? So we buy that company. I'm gonna hire you for $150,000 to be the GM.
Right.
Like, so I don't. It's not like I'm going to like go into work. Like
Right.
I'm gonna provide the strategic advice around the outside of this.
Right. Yeah. Maybe have a board meeting once a month.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
then
provide
you
the
just sit
strategic.
back and
Yep.
rope in what is that? Yeah, $350K. Yeah. Nice.
Yep.
So how many companies okay. So somebody kind of buys their first company. What's the kind of traction? I want people to kind of get excited that might motivate them to like take action and be like, hey, you can buy like your first company, and 5 years from then, you'll have enough capital to buy a second and a third, and they get bigger and bigger because the more proven success you have, the more banks are likely to approve you, and the bigger deals you can look at. And so kind of touch on that a little bit if you can.
Well, you pretty much nailed it. I mean, like that's seriously like, I mean, as long as the snowball. I mean,
Right.
Warren Buffett, by the way, has got a book called Snowball.
Effect, yeah.
It's the book's called Snowball.
Oh, I think
It's like 1,000 pages. It's a meaty one. This gal started from when he was 5 up till now, and that's exactly what it is. You just start clipping away.
Yeah.
And our buddy, the mutual connection, I mean, that's how he's doing it. Every 18 months or so, he's got enough surplus to then go buy another company.
Right.
And so,
Right. That's cool. Actually, Warren Buffett, I read that he started out with pinball machines.
cash flow.
Yeah. He would go into the barber shops, he'd buy a pinball machine, and he would just take out the quarters every week. And then he would use the quarters to buy more pinball machines and got in the newspaper outs and shit.
Yep.
That's super cool. Yeah. So what is one industry that you think is ripe, per se, for the picking right now, as far as they're super undervalued, and there's a lot of them with great opportunities that if somebody's listening, they probably within 2 weeks or a month, or I guess I don't know how long it would take, but if you've got like the sufficient credentials, like go up and snag this, and it's gonna be a
First
really
of
good
all,
buy.
so if you think about it, before I answer that question, is
Sure.
the due diligence that these people, like, think about if I'm going to go buy that business, I'm taking out a loan for essentially $1 million.
Yeah.
Because in the SBA, it's 15% seller financing, 10% down, so you're roughly financing 75% of it.
Yep.
You're taking out a loan, right? So you need to repay that. So you're going to have lots of questions about that business. Are the employees going to stay? Do they have any contracts? How accurate are the financials? Are they any liable? So that alone should take a while, and because you want to know if there's any skeletons before you take a loan out to buy the buy the business. I personally believe the home services industry, which is why I keep naming these all, because they're all owned by, have you ever read the E-Myth?
Parts of it.
So it's about the whole, like, they never became an entrepreneur. So they call it the entrepreneurial seizure, where like the person was working for the man. They said, this sucks. They had a seizure, and then they started to work by themselves.
Yeah.
But they were just, okay, we got more jobs. We're going to hire more plumbers.
Yeah.
They didn't realize there's accounts payable, accounts receivable, HR, automation, ERP systems, digital marketing. They don't understand. So these people are still literally working in the business and not working on the business. So a lot of these, so the garage doors, the HVAC, the electric and plumbing service providers, or like home services, cleaning, like you got all of these things that a lot of sophistication haven't been put behind these businesses. So they're not worth that much because they haven't done a lot of this stuff. Right. But there's a lot of ability to apply that stuff to it. I mean, really, if you go on the broker websites, there's anything that's out there. I mean, you name it. I mean, just random stuff. I think there's so much attention that is put onto the tech these days because of Silicon Valley, which is great because these people are disrupting the world for good reasons, and we enjoy using the services. But like, you know, it's just different valuations and different things. I'm not talking going to med device or healthcare. Like, there's like you name it, any kind of service. There's stuff that's out there.
That's cool. So, what do you recommend for somebody who just heard that? They want to do the due diligence, but they're like, I don't freaking know 2 things about business. Let's say that it's somebody who's been a software developer, they got a little cash, and they want to take action on what we've been talking about, but they don't know jack shit about running a company. Should they even consider buying a company?
Yeah, I think doing a bunch of research, you know, I mean, like looking out, there's books out there, I mean, podcasts like mine or John Warlow's, I mean, just, so I think there's enough information out there to start researching that stuff. I mean, if they had some cash and they're a software developer, I'd say stick to what you know. You know what I mean? Like, don't go way off track. I mean,
like another Warren Buffett.
Yeah, like if you don't, like I, you know, from the managed IT and the software stuff, I understand it, but I still don't want to buy a SaaS business necessarily, like, because it's not as much of what I know. Because like if shit hits the fan, you at least can go in there and fix some stuff. You know what I mean? But so if you're a software developer, find a software business for sale. I mean, you know, the Quiet Light Brokerage or FE International, the Rhodium community that you and I are in, those are actually for sale all the time. Yeah. And you know, then understanding how you're going to support it, what IP is transferred. You know, they're going to like almost inherently know what questions to ask from their experience instead of going in blind. You know what I mean? Yeah.
So that's interesting. So in your example, stick to what you know. That software developer could actually look at the freaking code, talk about due diligence. They could look at it, and if they know anything, you know, if they're a half-assed coder, they could say, yeah, this is a cool product.
But even if you don't know the coding language, you know, like, okay, tell me about how you actually build it. Are you using, was it the Scrum, or you know,
like, are you using Agile?
Like, tell me what is your process of launching new codes? How do you handle bug fixes? Are you tracking time and material for service tickets?
You know what questions to ask because you do that every day.
Right. Do you have service contracts, and how are you pricing them? And like, where's the hosting? What, like, all that stuff. Like, you know what questions to ask, but then you kind of then there's obviously all the other stuff. But
so, what if somebody says, I just have a bunch of cash, I want to like put it into, like, throw it at a company, but I don't want to be involved with like finding the companies or making those decisions. Is there any kind of like funds like that? They say, I want to get my money out of the stock market, I'm making 10% a year, you know, I want to get in on this opportunity. Is there anything like that? I don't know.
Not a ton in the lower market, which is why me and another gentleman are starting one the second half of this year. There's actually some interesting things. Are you familiar with Grant Cardone?
Oh, am I familiar with Grant? Oh yeah.
So Grant's actually interesting because he's pioneering this. Well, it's called Regulation A, Regulation D, and like, you can actually now, through the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, you can actually now solicit these people. So like for us, we'll actually be able to use the podcast and digital marketing like Grant's doing to raise money to people that want to get exposure into these deals.
Right.
And so there's not a lot in the small, like there's not a lot of stuff in the private equity or like buying the companies. The real estate, Grant's really spearheading the real estate. So me and this other gentleman, we want to like start doing this on the business side, because like why wouldn't you want to get into the
Like what businesses is your firm gonna be like investing in?
the inelastic businesses that when the economy takes a shit in the next 5 years or so, which it will,
Yep.
is you need it.
Yep. And
It's
you
all
need-
the stuff all the companies have been mentioning,
Okay.
right? I mean, it's going to be utility based businesses and
Offices still need to get clean. Shit still needs to be
pumped.
pumped.
I'm gonna probably stay away from that.
From the shit pumping stuff.
You know what? If it's
There's
kicking,
good money in
if it's
that.
kicking out 80%, I don't know, cash on cash maybe. But
Yeah,
I think it's stuff that has not been the businesses aren't sophisticated, mature. A lot of technology can be applied to it, and it's AI is going to be somewhat helping of it, but so it's going to be a lot of the businesses I've been talking about. But for the listeners, I mean, anything that is like, if they see like the Regulation A or even Grant Cardone, they can start looking for that kind of stuff. But like most of the PE from the traditional private equity firms, they go to the pension funds, endowments, universities, like the big insurance companies, and get that institutional money.
Mhm.
Where the fun stuff about this is everybody can now do it together.
Right.
Which, there's not a lot of
You have bigger buying power.
there's
and that's
there's
where
really
the
no
bigger-
one doing it in the mid to lower market at all.
Right. Cool. Well, I mean, when you get that rocking and rolling, we'll have it put in your show notes
I'd
here.
love
for
to
the
have you on our
episode.
show too.
So that'll be fun. I don't know if I could provide much value for mergers and acquisitions, but
Oh,
I did buy one company.
This is but this is going to be more impact investing, which we don't have to go down that trail. But it's I think that your audience would.
Let's talk about impact investing.
Okay.
If you're okay with that,
Yeah.
I think that would be a really good topic, especially for my listeners, because I mean, our whole community is focused on personal growth, and we talk about how you can implement it not just for yourself, for your employees, right? Let's say that you're one of those average Joes that has 30 employees, right? I had a team of 10 that worked for my last company, and every day I would say, what's one thing you're doing today that is gonna either develop you, growth you, and health, wealth, love, or happiness? And they're like examples of, like that people would say where I went and visited my grandparents since I hadn't seen them for 2 months. Like that's kind of building those relationships, right? I read a new book this weekend. Today I watched a TED Talk. Like, what are you literally gonna do? And then I want you to share what you learned to the rest of the company, so the other 9 people in the company can like kind of extract that gold nugget out of there. So I mean, this is like the perfect audience to talk to about impact.
So, first off, there's a book called Prosperity Paradox that just came out. He wrote The Innovator's Dilemma, Clay Christensen, like 25 years ago, and the kind of the general philosophy behind impact investing is that you can use business to change the world. Like charities, there's a lot of great charities out there and stuff like that. So I'm not gonna knock the whole thing in general, but like if you think about it, we're trying to apply and just like one of the examples from the book is they go out to Africa and they build all these wells, but so they go build this like $80,000 well. Great, we've got clean water and all this stuff, and then we, as in our the developed countries, we leave, and then there's no infrastructure there's no ecosystem to continue that well, right?
Yeah.
So there's no maintenance workers, there's no profits that are helping it, so they're almost always broken within 6 months.
Right.
So like, what good did that do?
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't do any good actually. So the whole theory is that like you can use business they call it the push versus pull. We're gonna push the wells onto you and all this stuff, but it doesn't work because it doesn't stick, right?
Yep.
So we're gonna like give you, I think the meals is amazing. We're gonna give you meals, but we didn't teach you how to fish, right? I mean, so this whole thing about like using business to like grow the whole economy of the world, like you can. So there's a noodle company that went, I think it was Africa that went into, but there was no infrastructure, so they had to build streets, electricity, distribution, warehouses, and all this stuff. So they pulled
That everybody benefits from.
Yes. So they pulled it all in, right? So they now employ it's like a $1 billion company, and they employ I don't remember, it's like tens and tens of thousands of employees in the community. But not only that, but the country has now a reliable infrastructure that other businesses are now using. So they took the warehouse, distribution, streets, and all that stuff, and then they use it as a profit center to essentially what Amazon does with Amazon Web Services, right?
Right.
So I think, going back to your whole point is when you have a business, you have employees, you've got leverage, you've got vendors, and you're in this ecosystem, you have cash flow. you can actually use that stuff to change things, right? I mean, you can do really good things with your employees and all this stuff, career development and passion and purpose that you can't do when you're sitting on a board of a charity. You're just sitting there kind of helpless. So I think the whole point of impact investing is we can go make profits, but for the right reasons. And Tom's Shoes and Patagonia and those kind of companies kind of spearheaded with it's called a B Corp, where they fund 20% of their profits go towards things like this. But this is kind of like even a little bit more of a shift of we're just gonna physically go for, like change things using companies and cash flow.
Right. Not just like we're allocating capital to we're just gonna give it to a charity.
Right.
This is like our actual business model
incorporates it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Involves changing people's lives and we're gonna profit from it.
Right.
Right. So I guess people's initial reactions are gonna be like, how could you help people like a charity would profit from it? Like I guess you're gonna have to like give more explanation on that. Like
so let's say that again. So you're saying like how could that replace charities and stuff?
Right, because I guess from people's mindsets they think a charity operates with low overhead because there's no profits that you have to draw from it. Therefore, you're able to do things at lower costs. You're able to buy things in bulk or whatever. So it's just more efficient, right?
I would actually argue a little bit to that because like a lot of these charities they go raise money,
right?
And then a lot of it, like so, one of the first questions anybody should ask is how much of this money actually goes to the cause we're serving? Mm-hmm. Or are we paying for all the executive director salaries and like the golf tournaments and all?
Yeah.
What ends up happening, right? So like, and how do we quantify the impact that we're having?
Sure.
They can't, because they're just like whatever. Well, and again, this is a huge generalization because there's really amazing charities out there, but then there's really shitty ones, right?
Yeah.
So it's like there is not really a business model right there. Mm-hmm. So like raise money, give it away. Raise money, give your services away or whatever it is. But if you create, now think about like what you could do if you had a
salespeople, really. Yeah.
Right. So now if you think about like if you had a business, whatever it is, you're serving customers. So it's servant. It's servant leadership. So you're serving your customers and you're serving your employees. You could create, career development programs for your employees. You could like do anything inside, and you're employing them, right? So they're getting paychecks, so they don't have to be on the streets. So there's like all of this stuff that business, the whole ecosystem of business in general, can fix it. So the whole point is that you don't have people on the streets or like needing the meals.
Right, because you're employing them and you're providing that. Yeah.
Right, and like what's the career growth? Like, doing the things like you were talking about, like what, like for in our business, people would start as a copier technician, but like we were doing managed IT services, so it's the difference between a $35,000 salary and $125,000. Yeah. So we can show them, like if you want to do this, like
you can. The carrot's there, and you just have to get it.
We'll help you pay for your education. I mean, like all these different things, right?
Totally. I actually offer that to my employees too. Is like there's room for you to grow. Like whether it's you help recruit somebody that we're looking for, I'll give you a piece of the pie. Like there's other things besides just like doing what you're doing. Like if you kick ass and incentivizing it like with bonuses and stuff too, or like you can climb like providing that ladder so they know what rung is next.
Well, and along with the ladder, but it's also community with your employees.
Totally.
And then
having the culture that you're talking about.
Right. I mean, one of my old project managers was just an absolute badass. Loved the guy to death. Would jump on your hand grenade for us.
Right.
And like cash bonuses are great, but like when he got married, we sent him to Hawaii for 2 weeks.
That's awesome.
I was just gonna say, so like the whole point is because business has cash flow, it has infrastructure, it has people, it has all of these things, and there's a purpose because some reason that business is inexistent because customers want to buy their stuff, right? So there's all of this exchange of value going around, so you can use that ecosystem to continue to do all this stuff. I mean, instead of just blindly going to the balance sheet, and this is by no means have I ever once said that like you shouldn't make profits, right? Like definitely do that, but you could do all of this too. I mean, it's literally, it's all possible.
Right. Yeah. Definitely. You can have your cake and eat it too.
Yeah, you really can.
Yeah, that's
awesome.
And
by the way, I interviewed this gal on my podcast. It's just an amazing woman. Her name's Sherry Deutschman, and she netted a ridiculous amount of money when she sold. However, she regrets selling because she created this system, like this ecosystem, like I'm talking about. She's now, I don't know if she's currently still doing it, but lobbying for the minimum wage. And she's just like, if you treat your employees well, like she was making more money in her industry than anybody else was because they had a great culture, great people, great service, and people would pay more for them. She was actually helping her employees buy houses.
Holy crap, that's cool.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
but when she sold, she's like, now I have all this money, but I have no infrastructure to change lives.
Right.
So like
I lost my roadmap to do it.
Well, yeah, it's an infrastructure, right? Like, yeah, like I can't have company parties anymore. I can't like walk in, see this employee because I have no employees. I've got a bunch of money in the stocks.
Right.
It's just a totally different deal.
Right. Yeah, that totally makes sense. That's an interesting problem. So, yeah, wow, that's deep. So I'm sure you helped her out and said, "Don't worry, I can hook you up with find a couple companies
Yeah.
where you can turn them around."
She's got her plenty of things going on. I think she's already an angel. She's already an angel investor in a few. And actually, I was just skiing with this gentleman in Utah, and he sold a business, and I'm actually gonna try and get him on my show here soon. A lot of entrepreneurs, if they're young enough, they end up going and recreating what they had. Because they're like, well, I miss my employees, I miss my vendors, I miss the game, I miss doing this, I miss solving problems, and like golfing or doing. I mean, like I would probably be at the Legion or the bar all day long.
Right.
What else are you gonna do? I mean,
Ooh, I had an exit.
Yeah. Everybody else is working, and I got nothing to do.
Yeah. The boredom factor. I think especially with younger generations, like you're saying, it's like the itch is there, and it's not like back in the day people were okay with just kind of staying at home and like living.
Yeah, like what are you gonna do? I mean, like kind of your whole thing is what's your purpose?
Yeah.
And I mean, find a big cause, and again, if you think about it, like if you find your purpose, how good does even writing a check to that do? So then it's like, okay, well then I'm gonna go roll up my sleeves and actually get involved. Well, wouldn't it be a hell of a lot easier if you had a business with people and vendors and infrastructure and cash flow?
Right.
To actually go do the exact same thing that you want to do anyways.
Yeah, that's right. One of my earliest mentors in my life, I was like 14 years old, I was introduced to this guy, and he told me, he was pretty much like, dude, charities are bullshit, man. You want to know how to change the world? Give people jobs. And I remember that was one of the first business pieces of business advice I was ever given.
So on that note, Prosperity Paradox is the book the listeners should listen to, and then it's called Toxic Charities. And it actually addresses that exact same thing. The whole book is about how the whole charitable system is pretty much screwed.
Right. It's just like taxes. You put all the money in the fund, and then it's like a basket at church. Everybody takes a little bit, puts it in their pocket, hands it to the next guy.
Right.
Oh, hey, we raised money for the poor. Cool. Well, awesome, Ryan. Is there any last asks that you want to ask for the community? Where can they follow you on social media? Where can they look up your company if there's a listener right now that's interested in your services?
I appreciate it. I've got my podcast that's called Life After Business. It's on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, the whole works. 132 episodes in.
Nice.
So any of these topics that you've heard me talk about, it's how I've gained my knowledge. On our website, it's gexpcollaborative.com. We've got all the podcasts there, ultimate guides on how to value companies, exit options, that kind of stuff. LinkedIn, I'm not big on Twitter. I've got it. And then all my automation goes out there so it looks like I'm on it, but it's getting automated. But Facebook and LinkedIn I'm very active on.
Okay, awesome. And we'll provide all those links in the show notes at onlinegrowthsystems.com/show notes. Ryan, what's one last thing, like one last gold nugget that you can give? And let's answer that first. What's one gold nugget that you wish that you would have given in the talk so far, but we didn't get to it yet?
We talked about a lot.
Okay. Come on, at the beginning you were like, we're never going to cover all the ground.
I would say, I know, we did cover a lot of ground. I would say, I'm going to reiterate that go on to any of these business brokerage websites and just start, whether you want to buy a business, whether you're a startup, whether you have a business, go on and do that because you're going to learn so much that it's totally worth it.
Sure. That's awesome. Thanks a lot, Ryan.
Thanks, Dick. Appreciate it, man. Yeah.
I come from a town where most of the people are so close-minded. They go into school and they work in a job, but they don't even like it. I won't be put in a box. Nobody telling me what I should rock. Nobody telling me what I should drop. Cause I do what I want and just know I don't stop. Recording till 4 in the morning, they snoring. I'm pouring my soul into every story. I'm writing, producing, I mix it, I master. I'm building my craft and I'm not looking back. I've been going doing things I want to do when I want to.